Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Proc-N-Roll, your guide to practical procurement. Today, I am really excited for another episode of our jam session. Today, joining me is David Johnson. He and I met, in September sometime and started talking about technology and AI. And wow, the way that David has used technology through, particularly, I'm guessing in these last year or more of his procurement career is fascinating. I think you're going to find this episode to be very compelling. We're going to do hands-on interaction with a couple of different AI tools that you can use and implement in your work right away. And if not, like if you're blocked from, we're going to be looking at Google AI tools today. And if you're blocked from using Google AI tools, look for the corollary of those tools in your OpenAI or in your Microsoft Copilot or whatever else it is that you're using. But the basic ideas that we're going to talk about today here are fascinating. Super excited, David, to have you on the podcast. Thanks for taking a bit more time with me.
No problem at all, Conrad. It's been a pleasure speaking with you and getting to know you. And, I love talking about this stuff. I think we in sourcing and procurement we should be at the forefront of AI because everything that we do is custom made to be optimized by AI. We deal with structured data. We deal with SKUs and contracts and contract terms. All of that stuff should sit in AI. It's what AI is built for. It's taking this data, it's massaging it and giving you insights, right? So ChatGPT or Gemini for creating, revising and, optimizing contract terms, doing the analysis on quotes and order docs. Like that's what AI is best at. That's what it's really good for. And we as procurement people need to embrace it. We need to learn how to use it and figure out the things that we can do with it to make our lives better because we're not as resourced as the sales departments as the other side of the table. We don't get 6 weeks of mandatory training every year. We got to fight for every dollar that we get for everything that we get. And we don't have an inside team to help us to review these RFPs. So we need something that we can use that'll help us even the playing field or even help us get ahead. And if I can help some of your listeners and some of my friends who I'm sure are your listeners get to that point, it's all to the good for me.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. There's so much of what we do that's data oriented. We are, as much as any other corporate function, we are primed and positioned to take, really great advantage of AI. I mean, for sure, data is the food that AI lives on, right? And we have so much of that.
1,000%.
I mean, for sure, like what we have, we've built this business at Graphite around cleaning up supplier data and other things. It's really important to get the right data in there. We'll talk a little bit more about that today. But we're so excited about getting into the topic. We're skipping right past what I really wanted to make sure we start with is, I have a tradition of asking every procurement leader that joins the podcast, like, how in the heck did you find your way into procurement? And I know because we talked a little bit before about this incredibly unique story about you falling through the ceiling. So please take a few minutes and walk through that because it is such an awesome story.
Well, I sure as heck didn't go to school initially for procurement or supply chain. I went for computer science with a minor in theater. So I was a theater kid who liked computers. Quick background, my mother bought me a computer when I was 9 from QVC, a PC. And like 3 days after I got it, I took it apart and put it back together. Like that was my thing. Like I always wanted to be in tech. And I've been in tech sourcing since 1995, 30 years. I've always done tech in some way, shape, or form. I'm always going to do tech. I'm never going to be anybody's CPO because I don't really want to buy paper. But if I had to, I would.
It's a great category to own for sure. It's exciting and it's always changing. And a lot of times the price is coming down. So
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, my passion is in tech, which is why we're talking about AI right now. And I also teach a class for Rutgers on AI in the supply chain. But getting into procurement, my first real office job was at a brokerage firm. And it was a brokerage firm that was going rapidly. They had figured out a way to kind of exploit the small order execution system on the NASDAQ. So they were making money hand over fist. So they were going crazy. And my role was not actually in tech initially. It was as a runner. So they wanted the reps to stay at their desks and trade through their lunch hour. So they had runners who would go get them food. The head of IT knew that I was in school for computer science. So he was like, I'm going to take you because they're not going to hire anybody from me that's actually a tech. I'm going to take you and I'm going to make you set up these desks. I'm going to make you run cables through the ceiling, set up desktops, all of that stuff. So because they were growing so much, their leadership asked me to do it during the day, during the trading day. And there used to be a tool called the Creepsit that you could use to run LAN cable through drop ceilings, right? So here I am on a ladder with the Creepsit running the cable through the ceiling, right? And I'm halfway in the ceiling and, there's a trader, 4 feet away from me who's trying to make money. He's typing away. And I've got this thing and I'm running it over his head and the drop ceiling crumbles. It breaks. I didn't quite fall through it, but it was very close. The trader is the son of the owner of the entire company. So now his hair's messed up. He didn't get hurt. It's drop ceiling. It's like nothing. He didn't get hurt, but he was so pissed off. And he's yelling at me and he's yelling that my boss should fire me, even though he was actually my boss. He'd just taken me for a couple of weeks. And my boss, in his infinite wisdom, a guy named Haskell Zupnik, shout out to Haskell if you're listening, takes me and puts me upstairs and he's like, we'll do inventory. We'll keep you out of his face for a little while. And there's a stock room that he's got me living in. So I'm sitting there in the stock room. And there's a bunch of computers behind me and they're still in their boxes from Computerland where they were delivered from. And I'm taking out the packing lists and I'm super bored. And, the woman from accounts payable comes upstairs and she's like, I don't know what to do with all these invoices. You got to get Haskell to sign off on them. Yada, yada, yada. Right. And I'm essentially right adjacent to Haskell's office. So I know that he's ordering more stuff and he's ordering more printers. So I've got a computer and, I've got Word, Excel, whatever. And I'm like, to make this easy, why don't I just do purchase orders? There's a lot of confusion around the invoicing. I can do a 3-way match with the invoice PO. I'll create the PO in Excel and blah, blah, blah. So I do that. I didn't have anything else to do. I wanted to still get paid and I'd rather not be sent home. So I built this system, right? We're going to do the POs. We'll order the computers and the monitors and printers and all that stuff on POs. We'll match them to the packing slips. I'll send all of that down to AP. That'll get Denise, the AP lady, off of Haskell's back. And I did that for a couple of weeks. Computerland was happy because they were getting paid on time. They didn't have any real issues with random orders coming in or just the quick phone calls that they had been getting. And, one day the controller comes upstairs, a guy named Mike McCarty. He comes upstairs to the stockroom and he's got an invoice packet with the PO and the packing lists in it, right? For like 30 computers. And he's like, who did this? And I was like, yeah, that was me. And I thought he was going to fire me, right? It's like, I thought it was a good idea. He was like, it was a good idea. This is what you do from now on. Here's a raise. You're not doing anything else. And I've been doing it ever since. I started creating POs. Then I was learning how to read and redline contracts. Then I learned about software asset management. Then I learned about risk management. Then I learned about supplier relationship management. And as you grow in your role, it just becomes more cool stuff for you to do. Right? So then you move into business process optimization and all kinds of other stuff that are adjacent to tech procurement as you're changing to an MSP-led world or, an MSP-led role, and you're doing professional services and you're doing implementations and all of that stuff. Like, as long as you're willing to learn, as long as you're curious, there's 1,000 different ways that you can branch off to. For a while,
one of the things I love about that story is, like, without a procurement background, without doing the job, you're able to look at these different document types and think about the disorder that existed and then bring it together in an organized way and actually end up with this concept of 3-way matching. I don't know if I don't know if you kind of invented that yourself in that space or if you saw it in other
Yeah.
places, but there's some level of common sense around a lot of what we do, right? Um,
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
one of my first jobs was in receiving at Western Beef. So like I would unload the trucks, and part of that was grabbing the packing list, matching it with the order from the overnight guy. So I understood the concept from that job, and I was 14 when I did that. And I just took it and translated it. Like a lot of what we do is absolutely common sense, right? At its core, but it's taking it, baking it into your processes that makes it better for us and using the tools that you have available.
yeah.
Right?
Well, I was talking with Zach last week, and he's one of our other podcast hosts, and we were talking about AI, and he asked the question, what are people going to do when AI does all their work for them? And I kind of chuckle a little bit because through my entire career, there's always been way more work for me and my team to do than we had time and people to do the work. So, my belief about a lot of things we're going to talk about here today, but just the principle in general is finally, right? Finally, we can take some of this administrative work and set it aside and automate it and sort of climb the value ladder into places we've all really wanted to work in for decades, right? We just keep getting dragged down into doing paperwork of some sort or another. And as we can move the paperwork or the administrative aspects onto an agent or onto AI or some other efficiency, which, by the way, we've been talking about efficiencies for the 30 years I've been in procurement, just like you. I mean, we keep trying to get to efficiencies. We keep buying technology and software that promises efficiencies, and yet we're still doing 80% of our work in the manual space of procurement. So I'm really excited about this new generation that we're in technology, the potential and the opportunity. It's going to be fantastic. All right. So one of the things we really wanted to do together is some real show and tell. At Proc-N-Roll, we pride ourselves as staying as practical as possible. And what's more practical than rolling up our sleeves and actually looking at how this stuff works? So one of the examples that you and I have talked about is how to use Notebook LM. Notebook LM is a tool that anybody that has a Google account, which is probably half of the planet, has access to this tool for your personal use. Note to you, those of you in the corporate world that don't use Google, you may be restricted by getting access to some of these tools in the corporate environment. Again, go look for the corollary in OpenAI or Microsoft. You can find ways to do a lot of these things in different tools. I actually am very fascinated with Notebook LM myself. We use Google internally, so I use Notebook LM. I use Gemini. I use a whole bunch of these tools every day. But the way that you've talked about using Notebook LM as it relates to sourcing and RFPs, I think is fascinating. So I'd love you to just take a few minutes and walk us through that use case of the Notebook LM as an automation framework to help everybody like manage and process RFPs.
So, I mean, I think the key difference between what everybody should understand, the key difference, right? So generative AI like ChatGPT and Gemini is a tool for ideation and helping with creation, right? You can use it for a wide variety of things. Notebook LM is an education tool. It's meant to take large swaths of data and make it manageable and digestible for whoever, right? What is an RFP response? But a whole bunch of data that a bunch of vendors have sent back to you that you now have to synthesize into your requirements and disseminate it to your stakeholders. But what if you have multiple different stakeholders? What if you have 9 different business units that are all doing the same thing, but they do it a little bit differently? And then you have to give it to your IT guys, and you have to give it to your finance guys, and you have to give it to your legal people. And they all have completely different ways of looking at it because they're looking at them from different angles. Well, you have to find, and of course, we never have the full amount of time that we need, right? So if we need 6 months really to run a good RFP for a major tool change, you usually get about 6 or 8 weeks, right? So how do you streamline all of that stuff? You can use AI. For me, I lived in the Google workspace ecosystem. So like Conrad said, I had access to Google Gemini and Notebook. So what I did was I took a bunch of RFP responses. I took my requirements document and I converted them all to PDF and I threw them into Notebook LM. And then I shared that notebook with all of my stakeholders. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to show you. Hold on one second.
No, I think that's awesome. What's interesting is you're talking about this, David, because I stumbled across Notebook LM. I want to say it was 2 years ago, but it probably wasn't. It might have just been this last year because Spotify put out a little audio podcast about my listening style, like my listening habits over the past year. Like, congratulations, this is your favorite song for the year, and this is how many hours you listen to, which was a little bit embarrassing to hear all of that. And then I dug in here and started to play with it, and I was using it primarily for the reasons that you're talking about, which is education and learning. But on top of that, I've had a number of my team members that are actually also using it not just to learn, but to query. And I think we're going to see that in here. Part of the learning is that this digesting of huge amounts of information. But before you go here, how does somebody get to Notebook LM? Do I have to install a new app on my system? I mean, I know some of these answers, but let's go back to like square one to help somebody get here.
So what you do is you go to notebooklm.google.com. We'll do that really quickly. And it'll pull up your screen with all of whatever notebooks that you've created. We're going to go into the DMP RFP. All right. So what's provided here are a bunch of PDFs that are solution responses for an RFP that I created. And what we're going to do now is they've all been uploaded, and the documents, it'll give you an overview of the documents that you were given. And then it gives you kind of these three immediate options, right? A video overview, an audio overview, and a mind map. The audio overview is essentially a podcast of two people going through your documents. So let's listen to that.
Let's do it.
We have been handed just a massive stack of source materials, really detailed stuff.
Yeah, these are the competitive bids, the actual proposals submitted.
And it's for a big one, their next-gen data management platform, their DMP, and the whole monetization system that goes with it.
Exactly. And this isn't just, buying some software off the shelf. It's a deeply strategic choice.
How so?
Well, it's about the future, right? How going to handle its first-party data, how they'll monetize it, especially now that third-party cookies are well on their way out.
A huge shift. So this decision really sets their course for the next, 5 years or so?
At least. It's a multi-million-dollar bet on a specific vision for digital revenue.
And we've got the proposals from the...
So what this has just done is it's taken my RFP requirements, it's taken the responses from 4 of my vendors, it's synthesized all of that information, and it's developed a conversational podcast-style 20-minute overview of these sources. There's also a video version of it, which you can use, and it's got some infographics and stuff like that, but I haven't reviewed that yet, so I'm not going to share it. And you can also just generally type and talk to those specific sources, right? It'll give you some structural questions, but let's ask, given the sources uploaded, what is a DMP platform? And it'll take a second. It'll review the sources, and then it'll spit out an answer in the chat. A DMP platform is fundamentally a technology system designed to manage, analyze, segment, and activate audience data. That's that. And it'll give you an overview of it. And then you can query it just like you would query any other LLM. Act as a seasoned lawyer and help me identify key contractual risks that I should look for in the upcoming can I type? Contract. Again, it queries the sources first, then it'll go out to the internet. Data sources and destinations, limits, customization, and exclusion of core functionality. It's giving you some of the key things that as an attorney, I'd want to look for when I'm looking at the contract and what I'm going to have to fight for as we go along. And it's pretty comprehensive, right? Term and termination risk. You want to understand the limitation of liability. You know, if you're not a contract lawyer, if you're a sourcing person who ends up having to review and revise contracts on a regular basis, and you've never bought a data management platform, and you're not 100% sure of what it is, this is a great tool for you to quickly get up to speed on what you need to know to negotiate with this supplier. Right? You might be able to ask one of your marketing people who know a little bit about the MarTech aspect of it, but then you got to go to another guy who's actually technical, and you got to go to somebody in finance to talk about the financial risk inherent with dealing with these particular suppliers. But you've got all of that right here, right? Based on the responses, it's right here.
Now, I've used Notebook LM loads of times. I have uploaded big text cuts out of Slack. I've uploaded a whole host of different things into that knowledge base in Notebook LM in order to do some automation for me and also to go through the learning process. When you're in this sourcing mode, and I remember sort of wishing and hoping I had time to go really read the whole annual report of the supplier so that I kind of understood them better, strengths and weaknesses in terms of helping me build a negotiation plan and a knowledge about the supplier or the technology. So the learning aspect of this is amazing. But what I found fascinating in this example is, building that around the RFP responses themselves. And then, figuring out how to use that knowledge base now to automate what is a very taxing. I mean, those of you who listen to the podcast know that I'm constantly railing on how ridiculous the RFP process is generally, right? Like we're in this sourcing world where we have a procurement where we tend to, I don't know, improperly believe that the bigger the RFP is, the better our decision is going to be. And I think the opposite is actually true. The smaller it is, focused on what really matters most to the business, the better outcome you're going to get from the RFP itself. But now as you bring all of these file types in, and it sounds like if it's coming back in a spreadsheet or it's coming back in any sort of electronic format, the key is to convert it to PDF, put it, upload it as a data source to the Notebook LM. And then what are the kinds of things that you're doing beyond just kind of learning about it? How do you use this knowledge base to streamline it and bring efficiency to the scoring, right? Because the supplier's taking a lot of time to do their process. Now you bring it back to your cross-functional team, which, by the way, they're the ones that ask for 80% of these questions. And now we need to wait for them to go through and process and digest and give us back opinions about what the suppliers have said. How have you used that most efficiently in that part of the process?
So, I mean, no matter what, the final responsibility for the RFP lies with us in sourcing. But the responsibility for weighting a specific subset of requirements does lie with the stakeholders. So you've already got your Excel spreadsheet or your Coupa tool or your Zycus tool that's got the requirements in there, and it should have some weighting. But they can just copy and paste those questions directly into Notebook LM and get those responses from 4 different vendors. In this case, it's 4 different vendor responses, right? You share the notebook. If you're living in the Google ecosystem, you share it with all your stakeholders. So they have access to create these audio video overviews. They can create flashcards, mind maps. They can create quizzes from the information so they can rapidly upskill on the product that they're trying to buy, right? And they can build out questions about proprietary features and all of that stuff that sits within the data sources, and they're just talking to it. Like they're talking to ChatGPT or they're talking to Google Gemini, and they're getting the answers to their questions. And then on the screen next to them, they're filling in their number based on the requirement in your PDF or your Coupa, in your Excel or your Coupa.
So I'm imagining that maybe I can ask a question like, which of these 4 vendors has the best, I don't know, disaster recovery plan? Or do they all have a business content, an effective business continuity plan? Is that accurate? I mean, you can do those kinds of things?
Which of these responses has the most comprehensive business continuity response? Continuity.
That's probably good, just like that.
It's always good when you can't think of a word when you're trying to prompt. And then it gives you an overview of the responses for each one. The availability guarantee, 99.5% of the time in a calendar month. Time matrix, high severity. This is the SLAs, support coverage, excused downtime. All the stuff that comes in your response is pulled out. It discusses the data flow of continuity for this one particular vendor, Permitive. All of the information is built from the sources. So, I mean, you can ask it to do some internet research to more fully flesh out the business continuity response. Let's see if this works.
I was wondering whether you can, I don't know if you tried this before, but like on a scale of 1 to 10, like, have it do the scoring for you. I wonder how good it is of actually just using, common sense and judgment to apply a score like we ask our business stakeholders to.
It can. It can. And actually in the actual notebook that I created, I did build out a scorecard based on the requirements and no weighting, so that it defined its own weight based on the sheer volume of questions, right? We had 180 something requirements created by different people with different roles. And that was all in the requirements document. And I just took it, threw it in here, and I said, based on the requirements, give me a score for each of these subsections, because it was broken down into subsections based on supply, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it built out a full scorecard with recommendations based on the requirements that were given.
That is so cool.
Yeah. And it did its internet research, and it looked up each of these. These are actually different responses than were in before. This time in a table format, but it's also adding cyber liability insurance because that's publicly available for ArcSpan.
As luck would have it, we've got the city water service doing a dump truck backup for the past 5 minutes up and down my street. So you can hear the beeping rattling through. That's what's going on over here. I'm just fascinated by the kind of the blend of, create your own knowledge library inside of Notebook LM, and then use Notebook LM as an automation layer for learning and even digesting and scoring. What was your experience in terms of, I mean, you've been doing RFPs for 30 years. Like, how has this changed people's behavior? How has this changed the efficiency and the process time? You know, like boil down your learnings into, okay, you've tried this a few times now or many times. You know, how would you instruct a sourcing professional that wants to go out and try this? What are the stumbles or the learnings you had along the way, and how would you go about doing, maybe the step by step? Do you modify how you create your RFP, or just bring the responses back here, and then how do you work with your stakeholders most efficiently to enable them to use and get efficiency in their scoring?
So interestingly enough, when I did this RFP, I was doing 4 RFPs at the same time. I was doing one for a data management platform, one for a customer data platform replacement. I was doing one for I was doing 2 different cyber products that we were replacing. And a 5th one, which was, it was for our risk and compliance team, legal hold compliance. So that's 5 RFPs that are being done at the same time. 5 RFPs that were, that needed to be scored, that needed to be reviewed and responded to. I think from all of them, it was a total of 28 or 29 different vendor responses that I had to go through, and it all had to be done by the end of a quarter. And I had a team, but they were not available very much because they were keeping the lights on while I was trying to do this strategic work. So the learning that I have is this is 1,000 times more efficient than if I had tried to do this myself. I learned that I got double the response rate. You send an RFP to 10 people, 5 people will read everything and respond to those requirements. Those 5 people will give you good scoring, and those 5 people will be the 5 people that were most engaged in subsequent discussions. But that might not be the length and breadth of the response that you absolutely need. And now you're chasing people to get their responses. I can't score it right now. I don't have time. I'm in meetings all day today. I can't give you the score back when you need it. This completely changed the game, because those same, and again, I'm doing this for a company that has 9 subsidiaries. So I have to get, 9 people from 9 different companies to buy into these things, right? Especially for something like a data management platform. The response and the speed of those responses were greatly heightened, right? So compared to the cybersecurity one, this was started a week later. It had more stakeholders, and I was fully ready to award it 2 weeks before the cybersecurity RFP was up.
Wow.
Just because I got this buy-in.
Yeah. Did they know that it was coming across in Notebook LM, or did it kind of, hey, here's the responses, we're through them? It just a bit of a surprise for them, right?
I put a Zoom meeting together. I put a Google Meet together with my stakeholders. I sent out an email. I said, listen, I'm going to give you access to all of these RFP responses in Notebook LM. Here's how you can use it. Here's what I'd like you to do. It's 20 minutes. Listen to the audio overview that I created. I did that already. They had access to it. Create mind maps based on what you need. Review the mind maps, and then do your scoring. And it was all in here. If this is shared with, 20 people, you can see what each of these other people did. And obviously you tell everybody, right? There's a mind map that was created by Conrad in the notebook. Well, what is Conrad looking at? And this is what's important to him. They can see your questions, your conversations, So it made it a lot easier to get responses from RFP participants, internal stakeholders.
Yeah. And then they put their scores from their analysis into a spreadsheet or something and got that back to you.
Yeah, we had a separate drive with a scorecard that was created in Excel. Unfortunately, I didn't figure out a way to get automated scoring in for everybody else. I mean, I probably could have done it, but I wanted it kept separate. I didn't want everyone to see everybody else's scoring.
Yeah, some level of you don't want it to be completely transparent, right? People try to start gaming the system and doing all sorts of things if they can see everything. Wow. Well, so this is really cool. I'm not in a sourcing role right now, but this technology of Notebook LM, I would encourage everybody to go out to Notebook LM, play around with it. I know we've done, I don't remember if I told you, David, or not, but we actually had a Google AI advocate, a Google employee come on and kind of talk about Notebook LM. I loved what you were doing when you were saying, hey, as a legal contracts professional or whatever it was, this is one of the best practices that he suggested in there, is to start your prompt with, kind of bounding the skill and focus of the response, right? So you're not just taking the entire world of knowledge, you're kind of narrowing it down and giving priority to the things that are going to matter most to you. But I think that the use cases, in fact, let me share my screen here. I'll share my other screen here because I want to ask you questions about another technology you were telling me about at the same time. Let me go over here. So you're going to get visibility to my Notebook LM library here. I use this for tons of stuff, right? Like I had a friend talking to me about the Federalist Papers. And so I'm like, okay, we'll just go upload the Federalist Papers here and let's now we can actually talk about stuff. Now, full confession, I've always wanted to read the Federalist Papers, but I've never felt, I've never made the time. But so there's so many different ways that you can think about using this technology for personal reasons and business reasons. I talked before about, maybe uploading an annual report. Here's a Cushman and Wakefield 10K filing where things that you want to know and understand, it would take me hours and hours to digest annual reports and 10K filings and, get, 15 to 20 minute download an instruction about a supplier or a technology or a process. It completely changes the game on things, but also lots of different, automation options as well. So I want to pivot a little bit and talk about this thing you introduced me to. I had heard about it before, but I hadn't really tried to use it. I want to kind of open up and try and use it right now. But when we think about Notebook LM versus Gemini Gems, these are two places where you can go create your own knowledge base, like your own knowledge domain, data domain for the AI to run against. How do you think about when you use a gem, which is Gemini Gem, versus when you use, a full Notebook LM?
So think of a gem as a customized, creative partner, an AI assistant. But Notebook LM is a full learning platform. A gem is going to be limited to 10 documents or 10 files. You can put a whole lot more into Notebook LM. The gem is going to do, it's going to look at the sources first, and then it's automatically going to go out and do some internet research. So, you have a higher risk of hallucinations with a gem or a custom GPT, or I think Claude calls it project, right? They're all kind of the same thing. The value that you have when you're building a gem is that you create your own knowledge base, right? You can train it on your emails. You can train it on documents that you created. You can train it on, I don't know, podcasts that you like, right? And you can build it so that it talks to you in the way that you want it to talk to you, with custom instructions, with a custom tone. You can have it sound like your favorite writer. You can have it rap to you if you want. All of this stuff is that level of customization so that it's yours. I built a GPT and a gem for this very expensive Salesforce contract that I had. So users who were within the ecosystem could come in and say, here's my org ID. Here's the company I work for. Tell me about my Salesforce licensing. and it went out. It was trained on a number of, it was trained on our enterprise license agreement. It had our current list of admins. So it would tell them, as of this date, this is what you're licensed for. Here's your admin if you need a license to be provisioned. Here's the contract end date. And, there are consumables within your org, but you don't have access to know what those consumables, how many consumables there are, right? Or whatever it is. See your admin. I've built gems that are very specific to my processes and my thoughts, right? If you've got an order doc and you're a tech, what would David look for so that he doesn't have to do this on this order doc? Upload it, and then it'll review the order doc, and it'll say, oh, this is, it auto renews. The terms are net 30. It should be net 60. It's, there's a legal term at the bottom of this. Should not be here.
I got to interrupt you and ask you some questions here based on what you're describing, because a few minutes ago, I created this Proc-N-Roll assistant gem, and now I'm coming back like it's in here as a gem. I'm coming back here, and you can see all my other chats before, but I come in here as gem, and this just looks like Gemini now. So there's a layer of this gem on top of my Gemini. But is there a way for me to go back and see or edit what I've created in this assistant? How do I modify that gem over time?
So you can go back into explore gems, right? So the hamburger, explore gems, and right in here, there's a little edit button. Yep. And then what you do is you go to your custom instructions, right? Which is this box right there, and you can make changes. All right. You can change the tone. You can change the documents that you wanted to review. You can add to it later on, right? You take out one transcript, put in a different transcript because you got a better one. The custom instructions are really oh, let's see what he's doing. Let's see where he's going.
I don't know. This could be dangerous.
So I like Bill Simmons as a writer. He's a sports writer. Oh, there we go. Create all my responses as a poem. Okay. Now update it.
I'm such a dork. Sorry, folks. Okay, so that's updated now. And when I come over here and I ask, like, hey, see if it gives me a poem here. It's so funny. A chorus of wisdom shared in rhyme on modern procurement for this very time, with 70 years of insight profound, a bounty of topical themes can be found. That is fantastic. So this really answers a lot of questions I had about the gem, which is the gem gives me access through what I would consider to be like Gemini or my typical AI searching, but it creates sort of a filter layer and a knowledge base that I can interact with in an interesting way. Like you said before, it's learning, or it's acting in those ways that I want it to. When you're saying it's learning, how does it actually learn? Because I asked this question, is this flowing back into the assistant? Does the response become part of the assistant, or do I need to go back and edit the assistant and the instructions for the response and the interaction to be incorporated?
No. Your gems are learning from the interaction that you have with the gems. So if the gem learns that you are a huge basketball fan and you're enjoying the analogies to basketball players, you'll start to notice that over time, more and more of its responses will talk about basketball because it helps you understand.
Yeah, typing in front of everybody is always a joy here. Okay, so it's probably just thinking now, and it's adapting, back through the gem. This is so cool. Now, yeah, so it's already kind of coaching, and it's
Yeah, and it's still in the form of a poem.
Oh my gosh, how cool is that? How cool is that? Yeah, so one of the most exciting things to me about Notebook LM and these gems are the ability to be in more control, right? I've felt from the early days of using, this AI, like I'm not really sure, what sources it's using. I don't know really how to structure it. There's all this talk about create your own LLM. I don't have the resources to go do a bunch of that stuff. But now we're starting to get this ability, and this is not brand new stuff. I know that we're not talking about last week's breaking news on like the OpenAI browser that came out, right? Like there's new stuff coming out all the time. But this is very cool. This creates a very cool opportunity to be in control of these large knowledge sets and data sets and factor them into your process, bring the efficiency, and take advantage of AI in your day-to-day job.
Yeah, I mean,
David, I'm curious to hear kind of as we wrap up here, what are the other ways that you're thinking about AI these days in the context of procurement? What's your kind of wish list, or the next thing that you're planning to go explore from an efficiency perspective? Maybe you talked about teaching a class on this. What's the nature of those conversations and opportunities that you see?
So the supply chain is like I said in the very beginning, we live in data. So the supply chain is ripe with opportunities for AI to do what it does best. And that's predicting outcomes, right? So, we've already got a ton of predictive analytics tools that are out there, but it's a combination of agentic AI, which is self-thinking kind of learning bots, for lack of a better word, being able to predict your needs, being able to predict what you want based on your relationship, right? So in things like vendor relationship management, you've got a long-term relationship with the supplier. You've got a series of contracts that have been escalating over time. You're now 15% more or 30% more than you were when you were initiated the contract, 10 years ago. And you've got an agent that you let loose on this, right? This agent is now looking at the current contract terms. It's looking at most favored nation. It's looking at the clauses that it knows your vendor is going to want to get out of your current contract because things have changed. It's doing scenario modeling. Well, what happens if I cut my usage by 15%? How's that going to look? What's the vendor's posture? It's doing things like going to its 10K and saying, they announced that they're 85% pure profit. How can we use that to our advantage to build a negotiation strategy? All of that stuff is being built in these orchestration tools and procurement tools. And honestly, you can do a lot of that stuff with Gemini and ChatGPT, right? But it's with publicly available sources. So that's the key differentiator, right? You're not getting the secret sauce. It's what's available on the internet. And I love it. Right now, it's like the renaissance for tech nerds right now. And like the crazy thing about it is it's less than 3 years, right? The end of November of 2022 is when OpenAI first released ChatGPT. In 3 years, generative AI went from nothing to being in every boardroom discussion. How do we use ChatGPT? Every major supplier has a generative AI version of their software. Salesforce AI, Workday has a Workday GPT. There's one in Slack. There's one in ServiceNow has one. Like it's everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. The rapid growth of generative AI and frankly, even the way that agentic AI has sort of taken over with a storm now this past year. And I'm actually really curious to know and understand what's coming next, right? Because, I hadn't thought, I'd heard people talking about, well, AI is going to be able to do this for you and that for you. But, this term and this concept of agents kind of hit us, whatever it was, 12 months ago or a little bit less even, when it became kind of a common talk. So I'm, as we wrap up here, I just want to kind of roll back to practicality here, right? If you're out there in an organization that is not a Google technology organization, you're not using Google Suite and all these tools that we just talked through, there's a fair chance that you might, you'd be discouraged from using Notebook LM and by the way, you should, right? Because I personally went through and I did a license analysis of all these different AI tools and said, which of these tools protect my data and protect my company's data? And it basically went through all of the different technologies, the AI technologies. And essentially, if you're not paying for the technology, then you're not being protected. I think the only exception for that, and I still have a question mark in my mind, is OpenAI does allow you to click some toggles to sort of protect your data from them being trained on your data or something like that. I'm not really sure how much it protects your data from ending up in their hands or being I just don't even know. I'm quite skeptical of anybody really truly protecting my data when I'm not paying, right? Like if it's free, then I'm the product, right? Well, ultimately that's kind of the thing, right? So whatever your company is paying for, whatever that standard is, you know, figure out what that is and figure out what the corollary is to these technologies. Roll up your sleeves and start using it. This is scratching the surface on the new and creative ways to use AI and I would say this is in a reasonably manual way, right? Like this isn't an agent that's going out into, Workday sourcing or Coupa sourcing and like doing all the connectivity and the workflow and everything else. Like this is a semi-automated, a lot of manual steps in here, but massive efficiency gains if you can bring this technology into your process. And I would say by doing that, you're going to learn and understand and even sort of innovate within yourself and within your teams about those next breakthroughs that you're looking for. And, rest assured, we're going to have our hands on, very soon, this kind of easy stuff to build agents, right? This Atlas browser from OpenAI that was just released has agentic capability built right into the sidebar. So you can actually just prompt essentially this browser to work as an agent on your behalf, which is very interesting, right? Kind of democratizes the use of this AI technology as an agent on your behalf within the browser or the app or anything that we're still within our business, like trying to understand and conceptualize what the implications of these kind of browser-based agents will be into the technologies and the tools themselves. But things are changing really fast, and you don't want to be on the sidelines here for sure. And by the way, I love what you said. Like this is the fun time. This is the Renaissance.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. Like everyone, I mean, we talk to a lot of people. AI is not going to take your job. AI is going to take the parts of your job you don't want to do. AI is going to stop you from auditing POs and reading line by line contract items because you've trained it on your current master agreement, and it's going to have all your fallbacks. So embrace it, play with it. It's a tool. You can dig a hole with your hands, but you can do it a whole lot faster if you're using a shovel. Just think of it that way.
Yeah. No, I love it. David, before I let you go, I'd love to get you and I kind of come from the same generation, 30 years in procurement. You've been at business for a while. I think I could guess, but I'd love to hear your feedback to junior David, way back in the days, leadership, other observations. There's a lot of our listeners that are just getting started into their careers or they're mid-level in their careers. What's a really, top level learning that you've had yourself that you'd love to share with the crew before we call it a wrap?
Always be curious. Never stop learning. The tech world, your business, your processes, everything about what you do is interconnected. And the more you know about it, the better you'll be at your job. So my advice to anyone and to my younger self, always be curious. Learn as much as you can.
I love it, David. Well, it's been a massive pleasure to have you here on Proc-N-Roll Jam Session. Looking forward to talking to you again.
Great to be here.
Yep. Thanks, David. Talk soon.
Thank you so much.